Just film. We just watched film, and we did our Orlando prep so that we didn't have to come in and have a shoot around tomorrow.
When you look back at last night's game, what were your takeaways, especially after Draymond has the lead?
Well, we fought. I loved the level of competition, the grit. Didn't love the execution down the stretch, especially defensively. We didn't handle things that well, but we were due a little luck. Frankly, we've had some bad luck. Couple of close games recently. So I thought the bounces went our way last night. Gillespie misses the three from the corner, but it shouldn't have come to that. We had a 7-point lead with like less than 2 minutes left. Didn't handle it very well.
Was Jonathan and Al able to practice today?
Al will not play tomorrow. JK should be available tomorrow. He was here today, so he's feeling better.
What's going on with Seth?
Seth is just dealing with a minor injury. I'm not even going to speculate on what to call it because I'll just confuse you guys and myself. So he's dealing with a minor injury. So. Exactly. So.
What did you see from Jimmy the last couple games? I know you mentioned in Phoenix there was a couple film sessions about just kind of how to get him more involved. Just what have you seen in that regard, and how do you feel like he responded?
Just him, being himself, being aggressive. He has such a great feel for the moment, for the game, and I think the last 2 games he's shown that he's understood he needed to be more assertive, more aggressive, and he's been excellent.
Has that been a combination of just him being more aggressive as a scorer and you guys getting him the ball, or how is that kind of?
Yeah, I don't think we're really doing anything differently. I think it's just mindset for him and for our other guys, to getting him the ball and playing through him.
Seems like Pod's also sort of found a steady rhythm recently.
Pod's been great. The thing we hammer home with him all the time is get off the ball. Don't dominate the ball. He's a guy who has a feel for the game and can create advantages with his movement, running through the catch, getting off the ball early and freeing somebody else up for a drive. And when he's focused on that instead of dominating the ball and pick and roll, holding it onto it too long, then he's a totally different player.
Gary said something last night that kind of said that when Draymond went out, he said we knew we all had to kind of make up for his absence. And what he said was that he cleaned up a lot of our messes, and we couldn't afford to have that. They rely on that almost.
Right.
It seems like, you can say it's kind of a lazy way to play it because you got him back there so he can. But when you hear something like that, what do you think?
Well, Draymond is an unbelievable defender. Gets us organized frequently, just bails us out. So I agree with Gary. So you remove Draymond from the equation, and obviously you not only miss his individual defense, but exactly what Gary said, just the plays that he makes up for someone's mistakes. Now we got to cover up that mistake. And we had one late that I know we would have handled a lot better. Quentin got a switch on Booker, and we were confused as to where the double was supposed to come from, and Booker went right by QP and laid it in, and that was a perfect example of where Draymond would have gotten everybody organized. We would have doubled from the right spot, and we got to handle that better when Draymond's not there.
Trayce has played about 15 minutes, 15 minutes last 2 games. What progress have you seen with him, or what is he doing better that's allowing him to get more extended minutes?
Well, I like playing him in short bursts. He's at his best when he's really sprinting the floor. The modern game is harder than the older game. We're asking guys to crash every play, sprint the floor, run to the corners. Especially for big guys, it's tough to play a stretch of 8 straight minutes if you're doing all that. So, this is one of the reasons we're playing a lot of guys. Because, you saw what Guy did in 6 minutes last night. You got at least 2 offensive boards, a couple hoops. But to play that hard, when Trayce can focus on that for 4-minute stretches and we just give him 4 4-minute stretches during the game, the level at which he plays is really high. And I think that's what he's focused on, and that's what we're focused on, too.
How much attention do you pay to
To the what?
Standings.
Oh, I look every day. Yeah. I looked this morning and, we all know where we are, I mean, and look, our goal coming into the season was to be, a top 4 seed, and I still think it's well within our reach. But it's, it can be daunting if you look and you go, man, we're, 5-6 games back, but we know how fast things can flip if we can take care of our business and find some momentum, because everybody else is going to go through tough stretches too. And, there's, I don't know, can't do the math offhand. How many games left? About 51 or 50, yeah, for us. Where are we, 29, 53? 53, so I was not a math major at Arizona, but I figured that out anyway.
So you said most of the time that you're trying to get the offense where you want it to be.
Yeah.
And what do you say, how much of that is dependent on what you're getting from Jimmy, especially when Steph's off the floor?
Yeah, I mean, that's the balance we found a year ago where, but we were playing small last year. We were playing with Draymond at the 5, we found the spacing, the ISO spacing for Jimmy, let him go to work, and we got the movement for Steph. We had the floor spread with Draymond at the 5. Our offensive rating was really high. This year we haven't played Draymond at the 5 as much, and we haven't played that lineup, frankly, as much, the one with Moses and BP starting. That's for a variety of reasons. I won't go into detail on that, but we are trying to stay bigger, play Trayce more, play QP more, Draymond at the 4. We think that's good for us long term, but we have not been nearly as good offensively playing bigger as we were a year ago playing smaller.
And on the other side, defense has been, for lack of a better word, kind of bipolar.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. Another time you look at it and go, what are they doing out there?
Yeah.
And it seems like, especially lately, some of the worst has been late in games.
Right. Right.
Is there a specific thing that you do about late game defense that differs from the rest of the game?
Not really. I mean, I last night's film, we just watched the final 3 minutes of the game for that reason, to see both offense and defense. I wanted the guys to see it. And there were a couple of just mindless plays where we score and we're all standing there instead of having urgency to get back. And they race the ball up the floor and we're trailing the play. There's no way that can happen. And so we just have to be sharper and more on edge. And that's an area we miss Draymond for sure, just his frenetic energy, in clutch situations. It looked careless to me on the tape. The three-point play from Book, both Gary and BP got ahead of the ball instead of behind the ball. And now it's Book coming downhill, almost one-on-one. It was really like he had Steph in front of him and QP trailing the play. Book gets it was Trayce actually trailing the play. He ends up with an and one. If we just sprint back, we're in great shape. So that's not scheme, that's just awareness, and so we've got to be better with that. I hope so. We said that before the last homestand too. We finally finished our crazy start to the season, whatever it was, 15 games in 29 days, 28 days, and we came home and then we lost a bunch of home games. So it has to be action and not words. So.
How was the film session?
The film session was good. We watched the last 3 minutes of the game. There's a few times where we didn't get back on defense the way that we should have, but those are easy fixes. We just got to know who we're matching up with, especially when we start doing the offensive-defensive lineups. So making sure that when we come into the game, we're talking and communicating on who we're guarding.
Was there any sense of relief winning a close game?
Yes, absolutely. We've been in dogfights the last few games, and so finally getting over that hump and getting in the win column again. We've been working really hard, and it's fun to see the hard work pay off.
How comfortable go all out. And how different is it preparing for that rather than maybe playing 25, 30 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, coach is always going to reward guys who play hard, and so being able to come into the game and just play hard and just going all out, doing what I have to do, rebound, play with energy, just asserting myself into the game, and then if I'm playing well, then usually he extends those minutes, and so with me, that's all I can control. I can control when I'm in the game, and I'm just going to continue to run the floor, try to block shots, play with energy, and do stuff of that nature.
What do you think changes the most when Draymond's not in the game like last night, offensively?
I think that the only thing that really changed was obviously we missed him out there. He's a competitor. That was the first thing he said to us when he came in at halftime. He's like, please give me this game. Please give me, like, we got you. And but I think that the emphasis on getting Jimmy the ball was huge in the third quarter and the second quarter. But I don't think that was necessarily a Draymond thing because Draymond's always talking about getting Jimmy the ball. But I just think that we just put an emphasis on that more, even when he was out. And so I think that in those instances where Steph's out and it's Jimmy, I thought that we did a really, really good job of doing that.
How does spacing kind of, as a big man, like spacing's been a big thing for you guys, how does that kind of work as a big man?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy's a competitor. He draws too. He's kind of like Steph in that nature. If it's one-on-one, he's going to go at the guy. And I think that being a big man in this offense is wonderful. And you got Steph, whose gravity is the best in the leagues. And then you got Jimmy, who, if Steph's in, they got to double one of the two. And you get dunks, you get layups, you get dump-offs. And so I don't think spacing is relatively something that we have to worry about and when we're playing. But at the same time, having those two guys on the floor pays dividends to our offense.
How often do you check the standings?
I check them relatively often, but obviously when you're in a losing streak, you don't really like looking at it. And so getting back in the win column is good, but starting in probably late January, early February is when we really start to lock in on that.
And when you look at where you guys have been, mostly 8, 9, and that area there. What are the things that tell you that you guys are going to finish high?
I think that just the way that we're playing, sometimes teams that are 8th, 9th, especially like back in the day, are teams that aren't in the playoff hunt or barely in the playoff hunt. And I think with us, the difference between us and those teams is that we're losing really close games. I mean, there's 4 or 5 games at 2, 3 points, and that could have swung the other way, and we could be in 3rd or 4th place. And so we just got to keep chipping away at this thing and continue to work, continue to look at the film, continue to get better, and I know dubs are going to come our way.
Is the mentality for late game defense different than it is for the first, second, third quarter?
Yes, I think that just depends on what's happening in the game. Like I remember last night, the 3-pointers, sometimes it's no 3D, sometimes we want to foul before. It all depends, and so giving up a layup sometimes doesn't hurt you late game, but it really just depends on the situation. Obviously, that final play, we really don't want to foul. We really wanted them to get a tough shot, and I think we did a great job of that.
Could have lost the game last night. We're up 7 a few times within the last 4 minutes. A couple times just didn't get matched up after a make. So we just watched those. But yeah, we just watched the last 4 minutes of the game and just kind of nitpicked those things.
Late game defense, the mentality different than the first, second, third quarters?
Well, of course. I mean, the situation's magnified a lot more because it means more. I mean, I think the mentality is the same throughout, but you just dig in a little bit more knowing it's, the last part of the game.
How often do you check the standings?
Not really till end of season.
He was talking about how you guys play a little bit less of that small ball, and that was really part of last
When you play small ball, you gotta collectively be better on the boards. When you're a little bit bigger, you can afford to get away with, just having 2, 3 guys on the glass. But late game or during parts of the game when we go smaller, everybody has to have a collective effort on the boards.
You've had a couple of good games offensively last year. Steve Patel, Steve talked about getting you off the ball and kind of getting you running when you can, things of that nature. How would you assess how you played these last few games?
Just making decisions quicker, on the ball, off the ball, offense, defense, just making decisions quicker.